I have lost to Luigi. Many such cases. Russia could never invade my country. The roads are so shit, all their tanks would get stuck. That is actually kind of what happened in Ukraine as well. In the initial phases of the invasion, you know, Russian tanks get stuck in the mud. Literally stuck in the mud. You know, very real obstacle. Very true. We will open up the muddy quicksand pits and simply eat all of their tanks. The Ukraine war is so doom-inducing on a few different levels. I think Ukrainian forces had to pull out of some cities in the east recently, which is not good. It doesn't bode well for later. Anyways. Rip Avdiivka? Yeah, true. Dude, honestly, this has been the Ukraine war and the genocide in Gaza have been such fucking massive blunders from a foreign policy perspective on the US's part. Not even from, like, you could even detach yourself from the humanitarian perspective and only analyze it from the perspective of what is the optimal way for the United States to pursue its own geopolitical interests. And even then, the United States has fucked up so bad, right? Like, obviously, Ukraine being relatively secure is in the United States' interest, because that's one more, yeah, that's two genocides that the United States is, like, asleep at the wheel on, or in one case, like, actively supplying. Ukraine being a stable and a democratic country in Eastern Europe and a strong, like, ascending economic unit is good for America, and that's good for a lot of countries, in fact. You know, I don't want to quite get into the whole rising tide lifts all boats shtick, but generally it's better when countries do have the room to sort of economically develop than when they don't. Because in either way, you know, you're still in capitalism or whatever, it's like one just produces a better outcome than the other, right? But the United States has been cheaping out on the aid to Ukraine. I think the recent aid bill that was in Congress in the U.S. had just such a paltry amount for Ukraine, and it had so much for Israel. Israel has been nothing but, like, a detriment to American interests in the Middle East, because they've always been, like, super belligerent and starting shit with their neighbors and whatever, which has really been a thorn in the side of efforts that the United States might want to engage in to normalize relations with those countries, right? Like, Ukraine has been, like, a potential herald of stability in Eastern Europe, and Israel is a definite herald of instability in the Middle East. And the United States looked at that and said, we would rather support Israel than Ukraine, given the option, right? God. Because, like, if Israel wasn't doing its thing, right? If the United States took a much more firm-handed and, like, I would say more materialist, like, materially informed and whatever approach to Israel, being like, no, look, we give you the bulk of your funding for, like, defense and stuff. You have to, at the end of the day, you kind of have to do what we tell you to do. So we're going to tell you to do X, Y, and Z, because this is in the interest of everybody in the region, including ourselves. You know, if the United States took more of that approach, then the the Middle East wouldn't be as turbulent as it is right now. Certainly things wouldn't be a whole lot better, because it's still the United States at the wheel. But this would at least give the U.S. a chance to normalize relations with, like, Iraq, Iran, Jordan, and all those countries, and would give them a chance, because the pressure from the United States is off a little bit, at least militarily speaking. It would give them a chance to normalize relations the other way. And then that means that, like, they can start economically developing, things are more stable, people grow more comfortable with the image of the United States in those countries, which leads to an advance of progressivism. And that, like, makes it more likely that countries that previously would have hated us maybe at some point in the future become more open, progressive, and democratic. Only one of the enemies is Browns, though, so of course they focus on them. Yeah, of course. You know? And then with Ukraine, the sooner the war gets finished, right? The sooner the war gets finished, the sooner Ukraine can resume like wartime development, because war is like extremely destructive for civil infrastructure. That's, that's the part that everybody knows about it. But then also that means the sooner the United States can actually start normalizing its relationship with Russia, right? One of the reasons that Russia is as economically, socially, and politically backwards as it is today is because of the economic turmoil they went through in the 1990s after the collapse of the Soviet Union and never really recovered from, you know? And like, without the war in Ukraine, there's a very real chance to fix that. You know? If only the U.S. would make the policy decision to fix that. I know, crazy as it sounds, better things are possible. It's just down to, like, how stupid the United States wants to be. And I do mean, like, the United States specifically, because the U.S. is the global hegemon. We have, like, the most power out of any country in the world right now. There are some limits, but, like, there's a lot that we can do, especially when we're talking about, like, normalizing diplomatic and economic relations with certain countries.